Sound is super important. Sound is more important than visuals. If you have really good looking video and crappy audio, it's a terrible experience. But if you have really good audio and kind of crappy video, you can still get away with it. Now, as an editor, you don't have control over how it's recorded, and sometimes it's kind of crappy. And so we're going to look at a bunch of basics of handling audio from start to finish, and we're going to do so with a clip that doesn't sound great so that we can learn how to try to fix some of the problems if audio isn't recorded well. But that only goes so far, and it's critical that the audio is recorded well from the beginning. Sound is something that I'm still learning. I have to look up stuff all the time. Most of the time, I don't know exactly what settings do, and I just mess around until I figure out what's working. So we're going to run through the things that you're going to want to think about and the options available to you. Just some of the basic tools at your disposal for editing sound, for making sound better. So let's just listen to this raw, unedited clip and listen for what we might need to fix.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot, that 3.5 weeks from the day that I made the decision, I was going to have every single video for the entire course filmed, edited, uploaded, and prepared on my learning platform. I'm a stupid person.
All right. Down here we can see our waveform, where there's absolutely no visuals at all. That's because there's the overall volume of the clip is quiet. You can see that the increasing of the waves directly relates to what words are being said or what noises are being made. So we already have a visual that our sound is functional. Now, if we look over to our right side,
these green bars from the day that I made the decision.
These green bars essentially show us the current level of volume based on the frame that we're on. So the green bars go up and down based on how much sound the clip is playing.
I was going to have every single
audio in video is weird because we want sound to impact the viewer experience in a positive way, not a negative way. We want things to sound louder and quieter and to have some dynamics. But at the same time, if we made explosions as loud as they are in real life, we'd probably blow the speakers in the movie theater and or ruin our audience's eardrums. We have to make the explosions quieter. If we left whispers as quiet as they were recorded, the audience wouldn't be able to hear them at all. So one of the things that we have to consider when we're mixing audio is trying to make the quiet things louder and the loud things quieter in order to hit an equilibrium so that we can hear the quiet things and the loud things don't hurt our ears. We could still have quieter things be quieter. There's some levels of range that we can work with here. But we want to keep the overall experience in mind. So we want to control how loud and quiet everything is. So the waveform and the audio level monitor are the first ways to understand what our audio is doing. Another thing that we want to do is we want to clean our audio up. We want it to sound as clear and crisp as possible without any recording artifacts. So listen really closely to just this section. Do you hear that buzzing, like that hum? That's very likely artifacts from the microphones. It also could have been the AC or some other humming or rumbling in the house. We don't want that behind the voice. We want it to sound cleaner. We can also do some things to warm up the voice. Sound, scientifically speaking, is a lot of different frequencies, right? Higher pitched sounds are faster waves and they travel at a faster frequency. Lower pitched sounds are slower moving waves and they move at a lower frequency. So we can actually isolate different frequencies. Not to get too overwhelming, let's just talk through this based on options. So there's a lot of tools at your disposal. I'm going to talk through some of the main ones. We're going to talk about compression, EQ, noise reduction restoration, reverb, time and pitch. So the first thing that I want to do to clean up this audio is I want to get rid of this kind of high-pitched noise. I don't know this for sure, but I'm fairly certain that Adobe calls humming low-pitched rumbling frequencies, and it calls noise the high-pitched squeaky frequencies. So what we want to do is we want to add a denoise to get rid of that high pitch. Now let's just listen to it, what the default did.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot,
It did not help much at all. In fact, listen to that before.
and I decided,
Now listen to it after.
and I decided,
Whatever this denoise thing is doing, it like ate my voice. That was weird.
and I decided,
Okay, so in this denoise option, we can see what it's including and what it's removing. And these are the frequencies in hertz. This is without the denoising.
and I decided,
Now let's add the denoising back.
and I decided,
The noise is just a little bit quieter. It's gone a little bit. Now, it's not enough that I'm going to actually do that. I'm going to delete the denoiser, and I'm going to try something different. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a low-pass filter. Low-pass and high-pass filters, they essentially allow certain frequencies to be sent out, and they stop other frequencies from leaving.
and I decided, because I'm an
So this low-pass filter is allowing lower frequencies, but it's not allowing higher frequencies.
from the day that I made the decision, for the entire course.
Okay, low-pass filter is not working. So now we're going to go with... We're going to try the dehummer.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot, that 3.5 weeks from the day that I made the decision, I was going to have every single video for the entire course filmed, edited, upload, filmed, edited.
So now let's listen to this with and without this effect.
And I decided,
That's without. This is with.
and I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot, that 3.5 weeks.
So I did very little actual manipulation, right? We dragged on the denoise, we hit edit, we switched it down to light noise reduction. So we're only doing 20% and it's linear. Now what I want to do is I want to focus on higher frequencies and see if that changes anything.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot.
That sounds better to me. The sound is still there, but it's improved. That is probably as far as I would be able to take it within Premiere. Now, I do want to show you how to do this and go a little bit further with denoising, because this is one of the most important parts of cleaning up audio, and there's a better process for this. So I'm going to remove the denoising. I'm going to right-click, go to this option, Edit Clip in Adobe Audition. Now, some of the Adobe products have a nice dynamic link where they can go back and forth between each other. So if I hit Edit Clip in Adobe Audition, it's essentially going to make a new version of the clip that isn't attached, and then it's going to export that into Adobe Audition and let me use Adobe Audition's more robust audio editing tools. And then when I save and quit Adobe Audition, it will bring that clip back into Premiere and automatically synchronize it and attach it to the video clip. Adobe Audition has a tool for noise reduction and removal that's way better than anything in Premiere. You don't have to do this. You can skip this section if you don't have the entire Adobe suite, but I do recommend this. So you see it renders and replaces. It makes a new extracted audio clip, and now it's launching Adobe Audition. Now you can see here that we have the clip, and it's just the in and out point that we had on our clip. It's not the entire take. So what we're going to do is we're going to capture the noise print and then we're going to remove that noise print. Essentially, Adobe Audition has an artificial intelligence learning process where it can understand the pattern of frequencies and noises that happened. And when you capture that noise print, that noise profile, and then you tell it to remove it from the whole clip, it will be a lot smarter. It's not just removing specific frequencies, but it's looking for those same reoccurring patterns and removing them. The way that this works, I'm going to find my longest, quietest portion where the noise is happening. Ideally, only the noise is happening, right? So I'm going to select this. I'm going to drag all the way to about where that I take that breath starts. So this is the portion that I have highlighted. So now I'm going to go to Effects. Now you notice this is the same list as the effects in Premiere. It's just that there's more options in Audition. So I go to Noise Reduction Restoration. You can see there's way more things. In Premiere, we only had denoise, dehummer, and de-reverb. Now we have all this other stuff. So I'm going to capture noise print. And again, that's going to learn about the noises in this section that I've highlighted. The current audio selection will be captured and loaded as a noise print for the use next time the noise reduction effect is launched. Okay. Now I want to select the whole clip, and then I want to launch that noise reduction effect process. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start playing the clip back, and I'm going to mess with the noise reduction percentage and reduce by a certain number of decibels until I feel like the noise print, the noise in the background is gone, but the audio is still perfectly clear. The problem with trying to remove this noise in Premiere was that it was only finding specific frequencies, and so a few of the frequencies of the noise are also the same frequencies as my voice, and so it was cutting off some of the higher pitched tones in my voice and making me sound muffled. So what we want to do is remove the noise but leave my voice as untouched as possible. It's weird. We're removing parts of the audio, but not all of them. It's super weird. Okay, so you'll see how this works. So first I'm just going to do it as it's defaulted, and I'm going to turn it off and on to compare.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot, that 3.5 weeks from the day that I made the
Okay, it hasn't done very much yet, so I'm just going to start messing with settings.
decision, I'm going to have every single video and I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot.
Can you hear some kind of the warbly echoing? Listen to the difference.
Because I'm an absolute idiot. Because I'm an absolute idiot.
Okay, so there is background noise, but the voice is clear. Now listen when I turn the effect back on. We've gone too far.
Because I'm an absolute idiot.
Can you hear on the tail end of that? There's like a little bit of kind of like underwater ripply warbling.
Because I'm an absolute idiot.
It sounds like it's echoing around me. Like the sound has gotten a little sharp. I've gone too far. Now a lot more of the noise is gone, which is good. But we've gone too far with it. So I have to back off on it a little bit. So I'm not going to reduce. So I'm going to lower the percentage of reduction, and I'm going to lower the decibels of reduction. So there's a little bit of white noise, but it's not as bad. So if we listen to just this white noise section, see how loud that is? And then we turn the white noise, and then we turn the sound on. It's so quiet in comparison. Okay, now let's listen to my words and make sure that they sound good.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot.
It's still too sharp and echoey, so I've got to back off a little bit more.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot.
It's still too sharp.
That 3.5 weeks from the day that I made the decision, I was going to have every single video for the entire course filmed, edited, uploaded, and prepared on my learning platform. And I decided, because I'm an absolute.
That sounds pretty good. There's like a tiny bit of warbling, but it's way better than the sound that was happening before.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot, that 3.5 weeks from the day that I made the decision, I was going to have every single video for the entire course filmed, edited.
Now, this is also where just using good tools comes in. My course sounds better than this clip because I'm using this shotgun microphone and it's right next to my face. I was using old lavalier microphones and their sensitivity was turned up too high, and so they don't sound as good. And there's only so much that you can do. Now, obviously, a professional sound mixer is going to be able to do a lot more with this audio than you or I, but we're going to do the best that we can. Okay, so now let's listen to this.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot.
It sounds better. It's still not wonderful. There's still a little bit of kind of high-pitched behind it, but it's a lot better than it was. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can add some EQ. I'm going to do graphic equalizer. And what I'm going to try to do, so this gives me access to a ton of different frequencies. So I'm going to see if I can try to isolate that frequency and maybe turn down the pitch even more.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot, that 3.5 weeks from the day that I made the decision, I was going to have every single video for the entire course filmed, edited, uploaded, and prepared on my learning platform. And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot, that 3.5 weeks from the day that I made the decision, I was going to have every single video for the entire course filmed, edited, uploaded, and prepared on my...
Okay, so this is too many channels. I'm overwhelmed. So I'm going to try to locate the general area by doing less bands. It's so interesting how you can hear it get muffled when you remove certain frequencies though, huh?
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot.
Okay, so the graphic equalizer isn't helping either. Is this really the best I can do? There's another trick that we can do. The voice sounds pretty good. It's basically just the in-between moments. So now we're going to start looking at dynamics. What we're going to do is we're going to add the dynamics effect, which has a couple of different basic audio editing tools, and we're going to use each one. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is an audio gate. So if you imagine, you go up to a gate and you whisper, "Can I please come in?" It doesn't do anything. But if you yell, "Can I please come in?" the gate opens and lets you in. Basically a gate that only allows you in once your noise hits a certain volume. We pick a threshold, and then everything quieter than that will not come through.
And I decided,
It's way too aggressive right now. Let's turn this off really quick, and let's look at where the numbers are.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot.
Okay, so most of our talking is actually chilling around the -27 to 21. We don't actually want that. We want things to be closer to the 9 to 12 range. We want it to basically be as reasonably loud as it can be without peaking. When audio clips, it's similar to how white pixels clip. There's too much information, and it therefore turns into no information. When there's too much light, the sensor actually can't pick up any differences, and so there's no information within the white pixels. In the same way, when audio starts to peak, it no longer has information. It's just warbled and gross. There are two ways to do this. We can do the clip volume level. We can turn that up by up to 15 decibels. I'm not sure why it caps at 15, but it does.
And I decided.
You can see it got into the red now, so that's too much. So let's go to 10.
And I decided,
Still too loud. So let's go to 5.
and I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot, that 3.5 weeks from the day that I made the decision, I was going to have every single video.
Now you can see it's going up and down quite a bit, obviously, but now we're more between the -6 and the -15, whereas before we were closer to the -21 and the -30. So we've raised it by 5 decibels. Go figure.
For the entire course, filmed, edited.
Now our average sound is louder. So now we can go in and we can do the noise gate, because basically when our threshold was a -20, a lot of the time speaking didn't cross 20, and so it was cutting out. It wasn't opening the gate for anything quieter than 20. So if we turn on the audio gate now, every time I speak, it should be above -20 decibels.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot, that 3.5 weeks from the day that I made the decision.
Okay, so it is letting in most of the words, but it's way too aggressive right now. What we need to do is change a few of the settings. Probably what we need to change first is the attack and release. The attack is how quickly it takes effect, and the release is how fast it lets go. Basically, how quickly it will open and how quickly it will close. Okay, so we need to actually lower the attack and raise the release even more.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot.
All right, so there's a thing called chatter, and that's what's happening right here.
I'm an absolute idiot.
The gate is opening and closing rapidly because it has such a small requirement. The hold is the minimum amount of time that the gate has to stay open once it's open. So if we change that to 20 or 30 milliseconds, then it will help us avoid that constant back and forth.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot.
It's still not happening though. And I'm going to raise the attack a little bit too.
Because I'm an absolute idiot.
Okay, so attack needs to be all the way down. It does. Release needs to be longer.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot.
I'm also going to lower the threshold a little bit. There's no reason for it to have it quite so high, because all of my talking is...
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot.
Okay, noise gate. We put the release to as long as it can be. We put the attack to as fast as it can be. We lower the threshold a little bit, and we have a long hold. And that has allowed us to basically close the gate every single time I'm not talking, but to open it for my voice. So if you look at the visual, it's not letting anything through.
I decide.
As soon as I start talking, it starts switching between being open and starting to open and close. Green is the gate is open, and this clip is, and the auto gate is letting the audio from the clip through, and red is it's not letting it through, and I think yellow is it's switching from open to close. So let's just watch the gate open and close in relation to the decibels that are playing through from the waveform.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot, that 3.5 weeks from the day that I made the decision, I was going to have every single video for the entire course.
Yeah, it's sick actually. This is kind of how it goes. We tried a bunch of stuff. Sometimes the Adobe Premiere denoising is more than enough. Sometimes the Adobe Audition noise print noise reduction is enough. This is one of those times where it still wasn't enough, and so we kept going until we found something that finally started working. So now we know our first main thing that we want to use is the noise gate. So I've gone back to completely raw, unedited audio, so that we're basically starting from scratch, except that we're not, because we know what works now. So first thing we got to do is we got to raise that decibel level. Now I'm going to paste, so I copied the dynamics effect earlier with our noise gate options. So I'm going to paste them back on. These aren't necessarily going to be the settings you're going to use every time, obviously. This is just what's working with this clip. Now let's listen to it. Now that it's raw, it's the raw clip. We just raised the volume a little bit, and now we've added the auto gate.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot, that 3.5 weeks from the day that I made the decision, I was going to have every single video for the entire course filmed, edited.
Okay, listen closely. after I'm done talking, it feels like there's a slow fall off. Like you can gradually hear the noise that's on top of my voice start to leave.
Upload, filmed, edited, uploaded.
I think that's because the release is too long. So I'm going to go back to 30 milliseconds. Oh, wait, 50 milliseconds is the slowest. So I'm going to go to 150 milliseconds. And I'm actually going to slow down the attack a little bit, too. I'm going to go to 1 millisecond on that. Now let's see how that does.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot, that 3.5 weeks from the day that I made the decision, I was going to have every single video for the entire course filmed, edited, upload.
Okay, that's good. Now we're going to use the compressor. This here goes to -3 decibels. But me talking here at the end is -22. So that's a huge range. So what we want to do is take some of these quieter moments and make them louder, and take some of those louder moments and make them a bit quieter. So in music, there are these things called transients, and it is when the initial burst of energy from the sound comes out and it's louder than the rest of the body. And this doesn't happen as much with voice, but you can see it happens sometimes as well. What we want to do is get rid of those extra loud and extra quiet moments and even things out a little bit. We basically want to tell the compressor that everything that's louder than a certain noise level, we want it to bring down. And then we want to tell it by how much we want to bring it down. Basically, the ratio is how much it's being changed compared to the original sound. -15 decibels by 2.5. Let's start with that. Let's turn that on and see what happens.
And I decided...
So you remember, and you see the raw, uncompressed sound is -3 decibels. But if I play it back with the compressor on...
And I decided...
It peaks at -9. So we've actually gone a bit too much with this. Like, it can still be louder.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot...
So basically, we've taken everything above 15 decibels, and I'm actually going to change this. I'm gonna say everything above -9. Split the difference, -12.
And I decided... because I'm an absolute idiot.
So now everything that's a little bit too loud, we've brought down. And it equalizes the average volume across the entire thing. The attack is the same here as attack and release. It's how fast it acts, and then how much it lets go as it leaves. Now, we don't need it right now, but an expander would just basically bring all of the quiet bits up further. All right, so we messed around with dehumming and denoising, with noise print capturing and noise removal, and with using an auto gate. And the auto gate in this specific circumstance was the right thing to do. There's so much noise throughout the clip that I don't personally know a way to clean up and make my voice sound warmer. But we can get rid of the most distracting noise in between me talking. So we've used an auto gate to do that, and then we've used a compressor to even out the sound a little bit. And we, of course, used the volume to bring up the whole thing. So now what we've done is we've basically gotten rid of the ugliest parts of the audio, cleaned it up a little bit, and we've brought the whole thing up a little bit and then brought the loudest parts down a little bit. So we've evened the playing field. Before I knew how to use a compressor, I would actually go through and hold command, and I would make specific dots where I was trying to lower or raise the volume level. And you can actually create keyframes like this in order for these parts to specifically be quieter.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot...
If you use your compressor right, you don't have to do that as much, but that is something to pay attention to.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot, that 3.5 weeks from the day that I made the decision...
Yeah, the compressor does all the work that I used to do manually by putting in keyframes. Now, sometimes There could be situations where you need to make keyframes happen and you have to specifically input a bunch of specific stuff. But like, for example, when you're like, maybe somebody screams in the middle of the clip. It was recorded quieter so that that scream wouldn't peak. So you have to bring everybody up a lot. So maybe you're using an expander to bring the whole clip up quite a bit. But then in that one moment, that person screams. And of course, with your expander on, it's going to make everything above a certain decibel level way louder, so that scream is amplified even more. A compressor will help in that case, but you're probably going to need to make some specific volume keyframes to lower that part. So the keyframes are helpful. So outside of cleaning up audio, which it didn't work in this case, the biggest reason why I have used equalizers in the past is because essentially you want to make a pocket for the voiceover. So if you have music playing in the background and that music is playing in the same frequency spaces as the human voice, the human voice and those frequencies in the music are going to compete, and it's going to feel loud and claustrophobic. And weirdly enough, you don't even have to lower the volume of the whole musical track. You just lower the volume of those specific frequencies where the human voice and narrator is sitting, and that makes space for the narrator, and suddenly both fit and they don't compete against each other. It's weird. Audio is weird. I don't really understand why that even happens, but it's cool. So the frequency of a typical adult man ranges from 80 to 180 hertz, and that of a typical adult woman is from 165 to 255 hertz. So depending on who's talking, if you lower that frequency range in your music, that will make space for the person who's talking. It's a big reason to use EQ. All right, now reverb is a tool. This is not to be confused with echo. Echo is basically an exact replaying of the audio on a delay. Delay and echo are very similar. That's why they're in the same folder here. Reverb is what you think of when you say your voice is echoing in a cathedral. Your voice is not echoing, it's reverberating. It's different. An echo is when I say my name and somebody else says it back to me. It's almost like Marco Polo, right? So at least in the context of audio mixing and mastering. If I add studio reverb to this, it's going to add that kind of the reverberation that you would hear in an acoustic environment where there's a lot of hard surfaces, like a cathedral or a cave or something.
And I decided,
right? And there's and you can go into this and play around with it. There's a ton of options: room size, decay, width, high frequency cut, low frequency cut, dampening. They all do different things. And this is one of those cases where you just kind of have to keep playing around with it until you get the sound that you like. But that's a thing that you can do. Another thing that you can do is a pitch shifter, which is exactly what it sounds like. You know, we hit edit, we go up in the semitones, and now I'm a chipmunk.
And I decided, because I'm an absolute idiot.
That's a fun one. Now, with audio effects like this, like reverberation or pitch shifting, there's like the really obvious on-the-nose ways that maybe like a YouTuber would use them. They say something stupid, and then they make fun of themselves for saying that thing, and so then they add a pitch shifting effect or a reverberation effect to emphasize the joke. There's more on-the-nose ways to use it, but also there's much more subtle ways to use it. For example, if you're adding sound effects to a scene and you want the explosion to hit a little bit harder, maybe you just pitch shift down the explosion sound effect that you're using, and that might do what you need it to do in order to really punch a lot harder. There's a lot of examples where these kinds of effects don't have to be noticeable and in your face, but that it's really important to know about them because you can use them in subtle ways. And that is audio.